We're very interested in how visualizations are being taken up in mass media, particularly in journalism. So we simply collected as many examples as that as we could, and then tried to analyze that. So break it down and see, what type of narrative devices and story elements seem to be common across many of these different examples. Visualization as a medium for telling stories leverages a lot of the techniques that have been developed in other domains. And a lot of those things, whether it's in graphic art or in film, carries over to visualization. But there's also other aspects that you don't typically find there, and I think interaction is key to that. I think this is probably true of narrative forms of video game as well. So martini glass is a term we actually found by looking around on the web and seeing what other people were saying about journalism. Having led people through a more strictly scripted story, you then open up the visualization for more exploration.
So if there was a way that we could confidently say, here's the data, and here, you can play with it all you want, but if you're not into that, here's a guided kind of interpretation of that we felt comfortable with, I think that would be great.
Another idea was the interactive slideshow. You have some frame, and you advance from one frame to the other, and there may be some level of interaction within it. So people might click on elements of interest, they might have a timeline they can drag back and forth.
We do this with a lot of things, right? We call it the stepper, a little bit of hand-holding about here's what you are seeing now, and then it plays.
The data slideshow that was based on our research into having all data in one space and how our audience reacted to that. And the general perception was that if there's too much information there, you've got about 4 or 5 seconds to capture the attention of the audience when they first come to your page. So by splitting it out into chunks, into sections, you can help engage them a little bit more by only giving them small chunks of information at any one given time. So if they are even remotely interested in it, they'll capture the first part of the information, click on next, and then as they move through it, they can get a better understanding. And most of the audience, sort of 50%, just look at the first slide, think, well, that's all I need to know. But then a further sort of 25 will then work through the rest of the slides and get a bigger picture. And we found that was a much more successful approach to trying to get across quite complex subjects than just give it a one static information.
Another idea was one of a drill down story, which was instead of having a more scripted narrative, more linear in nature, you instead have some overview of a set of topics or elements of interest, and you might drill down. So an example might be, for the recent Olympics, there may be different events, and so it begins with a map of the Olympic grounds, and then you might click on a certain region, it would zoom in and show you what events are happening, say, on Mount Whistler or on Blackcomb.
I think that's particularly for a news site like ours, that's how we end up with the state-by-state map as kind of our default interface, where it's just we can show you the big macro level, and then we can let you drill down to your particular county, that sort of a thing. But in a lot of ways, that's the information that people are interested in.
It's it allows some sort of navel gazing, everyone likes to, if you want to look up your own neighborhood, people are always going to look up their own neighborhood no matter what it is.
The range of expressive potential of visuals that are representative of data is very high. That said, I don't think it's a medium that functions well in isolation.
I mean, there is a new trend where data visualization is meeting motion graphics, is meeting the narrative in the story. It isn't just numbers floating around that's very pretty to look at, but has zero context. That's the beauty of marrying these two things.
The crisis of credit, visualized.
When I saw that, I was just glued to my seat.
This means banks on Wall Street can borrow from the Fed for only 1%.
Not only for me was it just, it was cute, it was serious, it was all those things wrapped into one. But it was a bit entertaining, but the visuals were so strong and it made so much sense to me to be able to hear and see things.
And amongst the pages that I did, there was a thing about vampire energy. And they said, we'd like to make a little film about this.
Energy isn't free. A 60-watt light bulb kept on for a week costs just over $1.
Now here, to me, is the classic difference between print and what you can do on the web. I mean, you can tell a story. You've got words, you've got music, you've got silence, you've got movement, you've got sound effects. The thing that seemed now to look incredibly compressed on the page and actually a little complicated could now breathe and you could lead people through the steps.
It would be equivalent to removing more than 18 million cars.
And show the lengths of things and talk about it, and that was a revelation to me, but it was an enormous amount of work.
We've recently just brought into the team After Effects, Premiere, some 3D animation software in order to be able to do more of that kind of video editing thing and that kind of motion graphics elements. And as I say, we're working closely with the TV graphics, who have a huge skill base in motion graphics, but not necessarily a huge skill base in information graphics. So it's about bringing them two disciplines together and getting the best out of both in order to convey the information.
Just as people have done rich analyses of like photographic composition or film direction, etc., we're at the stage where I think it's time to start thinking about, what sort of guidance do we bring to designers of visualization who are coming up. I think there's a whole generation of folks that are going to do great work.